All right, everybody, welcome back to class. And we want to talk in this video about the 9 core or possible symptoms of this commonly diagnosed mental health condition that belongs to the mood disorder family called major depressive disorder. Again, sometimes referred to as clinical depression or major depression or just depression. But the technical term from the DSM is major depressive disorder. And again, as I will say many, many times through the course of this class, anytime we get ready to start talking about a list of symptoms, it's just important to keep in mind about the issue of variability and the idea that any checklist or symptom list the DSM-5 gives to us, it really is just a starting point for us, and that the way in which these symptoms show themselves in people's lives really does vary from person to person to person. Not every single person is going to look exactly the way the DSM describes. That's where you and I have to just use our common sense and our clinical judgment when we're working with people. But major depressive disorder has these 9 potential symptoms, just like schizophrenia had 5. Major depressive disorder has 9 of these. And usually what we would look for is we would look for about 4 or 5 of these 9 consistent and present more days than not for at least 2 weeks. So that's kind of the time frame. So not every single one of these symptoms has to be present. There can be a mixture of these 9, and as long as there's 4 or 5 of them and they're to the level to where it's disruptive, distressing, and a detour, well, then now we're getting into the neighborhood of potentially considering the fact that someone may have major depressive disorder. The very, very first symptom of major depressive disorder is real simple. It is depression. The first symptom of major depressive disorder is an emotional symptom. It is the experience of feeling down or blue or sad or just depressed. This emotional experience that stands out and is unusual and abnormal for the person. So again, as we talked about in the last video, all of us know what depression feels like because we've all felt it. And so this is not your everyday depression, but a period of significant, distinct, strong depression, feeling down, feeling sad, feeling blue, feeling tearful, easily tearful is one of the core symptoms of depression. Now, I also give you the term dysphoria. Now, we're going to talk with bipolar 1 disorder about something called euphoria, and something being euphoric. Euphoria means feels good. Dysphoria is the opposite of euphoria. And we sometimes use the word dysphoria with this first symptom of depression for this reason. The word dysphoria just means nothing or empty or numb. And a lot of people who battle depression, when you ask them, hey, do you feel depressed today? They often will say, no, I just don't feel anything. I don't feel depressed. I just feel empty. I just feel numb. I just feel nothing. I feel like there's just nothing there. And it's almost always and it normally does not feel good. Okay. That's called dysphoria. And that's kind of, and really that's another way that depression can kind of look. So it's not always the typical feeling super, super sad, feeling super down, feeling super blue. It can look like that, but it also could too look like a situation where someone just feels nothing and empty. So dysphoria. So this idea of depressed mood or dysphoria is symptom number 1. Symptom number 2 that oftentimes goes with that is this symptom. A pattern where you see a lack or loss of interest in pleasurable activities is another very common. It's a second core symptom we often look for in depression, is where something has changed in a person's mood and emotion and behavior. Things that I used to be interested in, normally I don't care about anymore. And so this idea of losing a lack of or a loss of interest in pleasurable activities that I used to enjoy. And I give you another term. I gave you the term dysphoria with symptom number 1. I give you another term called anhedonia with symptom number 2, because that is a good term for this. I remember when I was a clinical doing my clinical internship many years ago as a counselor, I did some work in a psychiatric hospital. And one of the things that my clinical supervisor encouraged me to do was whenever the nurses and doctors got together to kind of talk kind of around the table or around the desk about certain clients, to kind of stand in and listen. And I remember hearing psychiatrists and psychiatric nurses, because this was a psychiatric facility, and they would say, they would use words like anhedonia. I had no idea what that, I'd never heard that word before. They would say, yeah, lots of anhedonia today, talking to a particular client. And the term anhedonia just means inability to experience or to express pleasure. And so with depression, so a lot of times dysphoria and anhedonia go together. Dysphoria means feels nothing. Anhedonia is just an inability to find pleasure or enjoyment in anything. So a lot of people, when they battle depression, they stop going to church. They stop going to school. They don't call their kids or grandkids. They don't work out in the yard. They stop watching whatever, right? Things that normally they used to enjoy doing, they just don't feel like doing them anymore. So if you've ever been around someone with depression, one of the common things we see is they don't want to do anything. And a lot of times, part of that can be because of fatigue, we'll talk about here in a little bit. But a lot of it is, I just don't care about that anymore. And if you've ever been around or worked with people who have depression, it's a common symptom of depression, not just dysphoria, feeling depressed, but also too feeling a lack of interest or a loss of interest in pleasurable active things that used to be pleasurable to me. That's the second. The third is a sleep disturbance. And so let's talk about sleep disturbance. I'm sorry. The third is a weight. I skipped one. The third is an appetite weight disturbance. So again, not everyone who battles depression experiences this, but one of the things we oftentimes see with depression is people either eat too little and they lose weight, or they eat too much and they gain weight. So again, you have to look at the context of what's typical for the person. So if a person is trying to lose weight, that's one thing. This symptom is really where a person is not trying to lose weight or not trying to gain weight, but they lose a fluctuation where they're losing weight, and part of why they're losing weight because they're not hungry at all. They may go an entire day and not eat, or days and not eat, or they find themselves hungry all the time and they just wind up eating all the time. Many years ago, I had a coworker who I became friends with, and this person shared with me, confided with me that they had kind of a long history of battling depression, and that they really kind of were really doing so much better. They had gotten therapy, and they were on medication, and that they were doing really well. This person shared with me that one of the ways they always knew their depression was kind of coming on, kind of coming back, was their appetite. Usually they were always hungry. And this person said to me, I could always tell when my depression was kind of coming back, because I get to the end of the day, I normally would be hungry, and I wasn't hungry. I wake up the next morning and I just didn't feel like eating anything. I'd go the entire day. The next day it didn't. And for that person, that was kind of one of the first, what we call a signal symptom. A signal symptom is a symptom that I experience. It kind of signals me, okay, maybe I need to be careful to take care of myself, because maybe my depression or my anxiety or whatever may be kind of coming back a little bit. So a disturbance in weight slash appetite. Those two go together. Hungry all the time, gaining weight, not hungry at all, losing weight. So that would be the third. The fourth is sleep disturbance. Probably one of the most common depression symptoms is sleep disturbance. Now, sleep disturbance can look a bunch of different ways, but there's two primary ways. I gave you all this information in your lecture notes and in the PowerPoint presentation. All of you have probably heard of insomnia. Now, people can battle insomnia for all kinds of reasons. Just because someone battles insomnia does not mean they're battling depression. But one of the most common ways we see a sleep disturbance in depression is insomnia. Insomnia is feeling tired, trying to go to sleep, and either not being able to go to sleep, or falling asleep but waking up and then not being able to go back to sleep. So insomnia is an inability or problems going or staying asleep, going to sleep or staying asleep. And so when many people battle depression, that chemical imbalance, right, that's in our brain when we battle depression, it affects our sleep very often. And so many people who battle depression battle insomnia, but also too, other people battle hypersomnia. Now, hypersomnia is the opposite of insomnia. Hypersomnia is where people sleep all the time, and they stay in bed and they sleep for 8 or 9 hours. They get out of bed and go to the bathroom. They've been asleep for 8 or 9 hours. They're still exhausted. They go back to bed and sleep for another 3 or 4 hours. Oftentimes with hypersomnia, the person's hard to wake up. They're just conked out, sound asleep. You can't wake them up. And when they wake up, they're real groggy and lethargic. Now they go back to bed for 3 or 4 hours. They get up, eat a little bit, sit in the recliner in front of the TV, go back to sleep. And they basically now have slept all day, right? And you wake them up at 9:30 at night. Hey, you okay? Yeah, I'm not sure why. And they go back to, they sleep again. They go back and get in bed and sleep all night again. They wake up the next morning all still groggy. Even though I've been sleeping for hours and hours and hours, I'm still sleepy. That's called hypersomnia. And a lot of people who battle depression, that is how their sleep disturbance shows itself. It's not insomnia, but hypersomnia. Now, real quickly on that, many people can battle insomnia and hypersomnia for other reasons. There could be a sleep disturbance, there could be medical issues, there could just be anxiety or stress, there could be medication, There's all kinds of hormones, right? There's all kinds of reasons why people battle sleep problems. So just because someone has hypersomnia or insomnia doesn't mean necessarily that they're battling depression, but it is a possible reason why they could be battling that sleep problem is because of depression. So hypersomnia, insomnia, the sleep disturbance. The next symptom, this is number 5, is what the DSM-5 calls psychomotor agitation or psychomotor retardation. Let's talk about what that means. So psychomotor agitation means that when people battle depression, sometimes they're just always uncomfortable physically. The word psychomotor means psychology and body. Psychomotor, like motor skills. So when people battle depression, sometimes they have these periods of psychomotor agitation. Their body feels tense and kind of anxious a little bit. Their clothes don't feel comfortable on them. They lay down in bed, they can't get comfortable physically. They have a hard time sitting still just because there's all this nervous energy and just kind of being tense and on edge, and the body just kind of feels uncomfortable, a little wired, a little bit. That's called psychomotor agitation. Other people, when they have depression, they have what's called psychomotor retardation. Psychomotor retardation is where my body hurts. If you've ever been around people who battle depression, in my years of counseling, one of the things that used to stand out to me in my early days of clinical work when I was just learning about people and their problems was I was always struck by how many people who battled depression talked about how their body hurts. My body just hurts. Well, tell me what you mean when it hurts. I don't know, my legs and my arms are like real heavy and like sore. I haven't been doing anything out in the yard, but my joints hurt. And sometimes people will say, I lay in my bed and I kind of sit up out of the bed and my whole body just hurts as I sit up. We often refer to that as psychomotor retardation. It is a depression. It can be a symptom of depression. And many people who battle depression have a lot of physical body complaints. Their body doesn't feel good. Their body hurts. It's sore. And again, it's a biochemical thing connected to just this idea of depression. That's number 5. Number 6 is fatigue. Now, again, this is tricky because, again, people can be tired all the time and easily fatigued for all kinds of reasons. It doesn't mean it's depression, but most people who battle depression, I say most, many to most people who battle depression are often report that they're just tired. Again, a lot of that can be connected to the sleep, especially if they have insomnia. It would make sense that they then become easily fatigued. And so this idea of just becoming easily fatigued, running out of energy really, really easily. Now, again, a lot of people struggle with fatigue and low energy for lots of reasons. And it doesn't mean it's necessarily depression. But again, it's a common symptom that we see in depression is low energy and fatigue, easily getting tired, always feeling tired, no energy, not wanting to do anything. Again, anhedonia and fatigue sometimes go together. Anhedonia is no pleasure, not wanting to do anything. That and fatigue oftentimes kind of goes together. So fatigue is number 6. 3 more, 7, 8, 9. Symptom number 7 is this emotional experience that all of us can connect to because we've all experienced it, but especially in depression, people battle feelings of excessive, inappropriate, painful feelings of hopelessness, guilt, or worthlessness. So many people when they battle depression, they beat up on themselves and they feel guilty about things that really are not their responsibility, or they just feel hopeless about the future and kind of where they're headed to. They just feel worthless. They don't feel worthy of anyone's love or attention. They feel that they've been a terrible mom, a terrible son. Oftentimes they just beat themselves up a lot. And so worthlessness, hopelessness, guilt, those oftentimes kind of run together a lot of times. Now, again, all of us have had those experiences as well too. But people who battle depression oftentimes go through this emotional dark spot off of space oftentimes where they just battle these inappropriate, excessive, out of the ordinary, out of the context feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, and guilt. Usually guilt has to do with something in the past. Something I did do, something I didn't do. I wish I could go back. They feel guilty about something that they did in the past. Oftentimes worthlessness is more about today, feeling worthless as a person, not feeling worthy of someone's love and attention. And hopelessness is about the future. Feeling hopeless about the future. Many, many, many people, especially hopelessness, guilt and hopelessness especially, but hopelessness especially, and I can speak to that from my days in counseling. Many, many people who battle depression, one of their strongest, most painful symptoms is often just a sense of What is there for me in the future? There's nothing. Many people who battle depression feel like there's nothing for me in the future. What is there for me tomorrow? What is there for me? Where am I going? I'm not going anywhere. I mean, there's just nothing for me in the future. Hopelessness. And if you've been there, if people don't have hope, that is that can be a difficult situation. We'll talk about suicide here in a little bit. One of the main reasons why people commit suicide is because they don't feel there's anything for me tomorrow. So why stay? So they wind up wanting to harm themselves or end their lives because of hopelessness. Hopelessness is powerful, a powerful experience in a negative way, and it is a common experience of depression. Last two. Number 8 is just what we call foggy thinking, an inability to keep my mind focused, not because my mind is racing. We'll talk more about that when we talk about manic mood, but because just kind of getting lost in my thoughts. Many times, if you've ever been around someone who battles depression, you'll be talking to them and you'll ask them a question and they'll say, what? I'm kind of a spacey, kind of an experience, kind of a misty, foggy, cognitive, kind of that experience of depression. Many years ago, I was attending a professional seminar, and a fairly well-known, famous person who was the guest speaker and was speaking of their depression. And I remember one of the things I remember them saying was that for them, when they think about depression, they think about this gray mist in their mind. I remember this man saying, "The gray mist in my mind." And he said, when I was at my lowest point of depression, it's like my mind was just foggy and just this. I was like lost in my own thoughts, lost in my own mind, just kind of like this haze in my mind, and just kind of just this what we call foggy thinking. A very common symptom of depression is foggy thinking. And then the last one is one that I mentioned just a second ago that we could talk a lot about. And it is this idea of a preoccupation with death, dying, and or suicide. Now, that can look a bunch of different ways. I want to highlight this. So, we all know that suicide is a very, very important, significant topic for all of us to be familiar with. There's a lot we could say about suicide just as a topic. One of the most common risk factors for suicide is depression. Now, that's not true for every single person. Not every single person who commits suicide or tries to hurt themselves is battling depression. But probably one of the most common risk factors for suicide is depression. People, again, like I said a second ago, oftentimes people feel when they feel depressed, they hurt and they want the pain to go away. They feel like they've let everybody down. They feel guilty. They feel like they're worthless of living. They feel like there's no hope for me tomorrow, hopelessness. And they just want to just go away. And so they oftentimes, when people battle depression, not always, but many people wind up getting kind of preoccupied and thinking about dying and death. Let me just give you some examples of how that could look. So, number one, a person could, when they battle depression, begin to think about what it's going to be like when they die, kind of wishing for it. They may wish that someone would hurt them or kill them. They may wish that they could just go to bed and pull the covers up over their head and wake up in heaven. They may not want to harm them. They may have no plans to harm themselves. They just wish that they were dead. They may wish they had never been born. It also may progress down to where a person begins to think about, if I were to hurt myself, how would I do it? And they begin to make plans. Anytime we realize people are making plans, that's when we become even more concerned. Beginning to make plans for how would I, if I wanted to, the next time I feel this way, I think I'm just, and they begin to make plans to harm themselves. It could be like that, or it could actually be making specific plans, giving away, items, writing notes of goodbye to people, and making actual specific plans to harm themselves, or making actual specific attempts to harm themselves. And so again, it could look a bunch of ways, all the way from just wishing I could go to sleep and wake up and just wake up and be in heaven, all the way on that end, all the way down to making a specific plan and then trying to harm myself with the intent of ending my life. That's on the severe end. The more milder end would be, wishing I could just kind of lay down and wake up and be in heaven with my dad. And so there's a range there, right? And so again, the issue of depression and suicide, or depression and death and dying, there's a common connection there, and it is a potential possible symptom. So those 9 potential possible symptoms, again, the DSM says is we would look for about 5 of these symptoms, any combination of 5 of these 9 symptoms, persistent nearly every single day for at least 2 weeks, and the symptoms are strong enough that they're distressing, they're disruptive, and it represents a detour from the person. Would be also we would consider all of those as well too. I'm not going to review them here, but I also give you some qualifiers, some other things that we would look for before we said yes, a person has depression. I give you some qualifiers in the lecture notes, so go look at those as well too. But the 9 core symptoms are this: depressed mood, lack or loss of interest in pleasurable activities, fluctuations in appetite and weight, sleep disturbance, psychomotor agitation or retardation, fatigue, feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, and or guilt, foggy thinking, and then recurrent thoughts of death, dying, or suicidal thinking. Those are the 9 possible symptoms of this very commonly experienced mental health condition called major depressive disorder. There is so much more we could say about this disorder, but I want to give you just a little overview of what it is. Go look at the lecture notes, read a little bit more about these 9 and the 7 key factors and the qualifiers before you head on to watch the next video and we talk about bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 disorder. All right, see you next time.